So, Madhur, it's such a pleasure to see you and meet you and understand from you the connotations of the word courtesans and also the book, which is your passion project. The subject is very intriguing only because the subject is picking a lot of interest as a special interest theme for travelers, for visitors, for educationists, And end of the day, there are various connotations to it. It will be great to understand you first, where you come from, and how did this passion project came up.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for calling me and inviting me on your esteemed platform. I am absolutely thrilled to talk about Courting Hindustan
Yeah.
and give you a little sensibility of how performing artists of today's age and day lives.
Very nice. So, if it will be great if you tell us, I mean, where are you from?
Right. So I am from everywhere. My mother was from Madhya Pradesh. My father was born in Allahabad. I have lived in neither of the places. I lived in Delhi for a few years in Kanpur. I was always dancing. As a 8-year-old child, I remember I had told my parents I want to learn Kathak from Pandit Birju Maharaj ji, and it was just so interesting how liberal my parents were. My father was a criminal lawyer, mother was a professor of chemistry at IIT, and none of them blinked an eye. My father, he literally pushed me into a train to Delhi because we were in Kanpur back then. And he spoke with Maharajji, and there I was. I began my training very early on as an 8-year-old from the legendary maestro of Kathak. And that's how my journey into the performing arts space it began.
And what led you to the world of courtesans
So,
as a subject?
right, right. So when you learn any Indian classical art form, whether it is Kathak, and right now I'm an Odissi dancer because I switched to Odissi. आप कोई भी कला आप सीखेंगे अगर शास्त्रीय तो ये सभी ये मंदिरों से आती हैं, and these used to be performed by temple dancers. It used to be one of the sevas for the deity, the god, which was present in the temple. So the mythology, the philosophy, the ethos are still very much present in the art that we learn even today. When we learn with a sense of spirituality, we learn with a sense of romanticism, of love towards the god. And this only the setting, the background might have changed from temples to the proscenium stage now, and even the patrons. But essentially, what the temple dancers or the devadasis, or as in English we say courtesans, used to perform for temples or for the kings. Performing artists are doing it for the mass patrons that are present today who can buy a ticket and watch us on stage to perform.
Wow. And what about Pandit Birju Maharaj ji? I mean, how was your experience with him? And your book Forward is also written by him.
ये तो बहुत बड़ी बात भी है और I am just touched by the magnanimity of such a legendary maestro. I had learned from him for 5-6 years, not much. And as a child, as a very young child, I started learning Odissi, switched to Odissi when I was 13, 14. So, but I still kept in touch with Maharajji. I used to go to his house, record him, interview him, like you're interviewing me today, because I really knew that his knowledge and his artistry and his mastery should be encapsulated in a very, visual document. तो जब ये बुक आने वाली थी तो माय एडिटर एंड आई वी वर फ्लमक्स्ड. आई मीन कि हु शुड राइट द फॉरवर्ड, बिकॉज हमें बहुत सारे मैसेजेस आए, जैसे उस्ताद जाकिर हुसैन साहब ने भेजा है, डॉक्टर शशि थरूर, मल्लिका साराभाई, माइस्ट्रो जुबिन मेहता, सब ने मैसेजेस भेज दिए कि कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस. बट हमने सोचा ये किताब का फॉरवर्ड कौन लिखेगा. देन इट स्ट्रक मी, लाइक व्हाई नॉट द बिगेस्ट आर्टिस्ट living legend that is present, today. तो महाराज जी उस वक्त दुबई जाने वाले थे for some concert, and very trepidly I called him and said, महाराज जी ऐसा किताब का आप 2 शब्द बोलिए ना. बोले हाँ ठीक है. तो क्या हुआ फिर, उनको तो अंग्रेजी माध्यम का इतना वो नहीं है, तो उन्होंने फिर हिंदी में बोला जो भी रिकॉर्ड किया, and then we translated it, and he said it just very sweetly. Also, one more thing, why forward from him was absolutely important, because his family has trained courtesans. I mean, it is a legacy
Yes.
in their family.
Yeah.
And whether it is Jaddan Bai or even Gauhar Jan, who I mentioned in the book, was trained at some point by Achan Maharaj Ji, Birju Maharaj Ji's father. So his foreword meant a lot to me, both personally and for anybody who is interested in the history of courtesans.
How does the name Courting Hindustan came into perspective as a title?
Right,
Because it's very different, very broad,
right.
and it is just up on their face.
So there is a very interesting anecdote to this as well. The initial working title was Courting India.
Yeah.
The word courting means to woo someone, to cajole them, to love them, in a way that is romantic and erotic and beautiful.
That is courting, yeah.
That is courting,
Yeah.
right? And so when it was Courting India, we were working on
Yeah.
it, this and that. And when it was about to be published, I said, you know what? India is such a recent name given to a landmass that we lived in. It was Aryavart at some point, it was Indus at some point, it was. I said, Hindustan बुलाते हैं because जिस काल में major of the courtesans that I have mentioned in the book, this area was called Hindustan.
Yeah.
And that is how we finalized, okay, Courting Hindustan. That is the name.
And from your writings, if you would like to meet one artist,
Okay.
you please spell the name.
मिलना तो मैं सबसे चाहूँगा, पर एक कलाकार हैं जो जद्दन बाई करके हैं. एक्चुअली दो मैं बोलूँगा, जद्दन बाई और गौहर जान. And why would I like to meet them is because, of course, they all are great artists and, maestros of their generation and era. But the grit and determination with which these women lived, in their times. One thing we have to realize that courtesans were celebrated. They were really, they were the tinsel, and they were the queens, they were the heroines of their times. But as soon as that event or mehfil or mujra ended, they were actually treated as lower caste untouchables. They can't enter into a Bhadra Loka household, and yet they were just so powerful and like absolute divas of their time. तो जो जद्दन भाई थी, उन्होंने अपना पूरा करियर कलकत्ता से उठाकर बम्बई में लेके आई, वो डायरेक्टर बन गई उस जमाने में. आज विमेन डायरेक्टर्स नहीं होती हैं, so many. Then Gauhar Jan even, I mean, there's an instance in the book where to ride a horse-driven buggy was not allowed because the viceroy could only do it, and she would pay a fine of 500 rupee back in the day, just to like. So this how should I say, this very free and very independent sort of spirit is something that attracts me.
I believe in this subject. I believe in this theme, and I appreciate what you wrote because I went through the book myself. One thing which I thought always in my head while reading, that what is that one misconception Madhur would like to break for the courtesans or on behalf of courtesans?
So actually, there are primary connotations that I would like to break, or not break, but like put forth. The first is that as courtesans, you were available, you were easy women or you were easy artists, just, accessible.
Yeah.
And that is not the case at all. It wasn't back then, it isn't now. So any woman or any man, even for that, matter, there's nothing to do with gender. If you're working in the public sector, if you are to face people, you have to face a boss, you have to face a colleague, you have to face your juniors, whoever, right? Is susceptible to exploitation, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to give in to that, right? So the concept that courtesans were also sexually accessible by the patrons is absolutely a no-no. Of course, there have been instances where there were forced exploitations, but that's besides the point. That's even relevant today. For example, Bala Saraswati, she only had one patron for her entire life, Mr. Shanmugam, the first finance minister of India. और उन्होंने ना कभी शादी करी, ना कभी कोई और ऐसे patron रखे, तो ये बहुत misconception है. देवदासियाँ वो मंदिरों में नृत्य, आप अभी जगन्नाथपुरी होके आए हैं, तो उसमें भीतर गौणी बाहर गौणी ये सब नित्य सेवाएं होती थी.
इवन कोणार्क टेम्पल, द सन टेम्पल, वो जो बाहर का एरिया है,
नित्य नाट्य मंडप है वहाँ पे.
yeah.
तो ये बहुत लाइक लिविंग ट्रेडिशंस थे और अभी भी हैं, यू नो. सो वही हमें सिखाए गए हैं, वही हम आज भी करते हैं स्टेज पे. तो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग रहेगा किसी के लिए भी वो देखना,
Yeah.
क्योंकि वन थिंग इज टू सी अ स्टैटिक building or a static photo or painting, whatever, right? But to see it in life, you know, to see like a living echo
Yeah.
of what it used to be.
Yeah.
I think that would be valuable to anybody who would. Thank you so much, Sachin, for inviting an artist like me today, because I completely believe in the fact that arts can only exist, you know, when true patrons of arts do. And so platforms like yours, you know, are absolutely relevant and a must watch for anybody who would like to reconnect with their culture or would like to grow with it and would like to understand what it is really to be an Indian.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.